Before we move on to doing more exciting stuff, I thought we could clean up our code a little bit and do a few miscellaneous stuff that I've been meaning to do for a while, but I haven't. They're not really things that have been important or long enough to do that they deserve their own video, so let's just put them all in this video. First off, we're going to make a new game mode and player controller. That's because right now, well, in order to start the game, we have to go to level blueprint and we have to tell it to get our game instance and all that stuff and put it on screen. And here, let me just show you that right now. Get game instance, cast to VN game instance, get menu, and add to viewport. And okay, so I mean that works. It shows up on screen alright, but another problem is that if we click anywhere that's not on a button, then we lose our mouse and we start moving around instead, or we start looking around instead. So that's why we also are going to create a new player controller. Now technically we don't actually have to do this, but I just think it's nice to do. So go to our create a new blueprint. This is going to be a game mode base. We're going to call this VN game mode. And because this is an actor, it does have a begin play and event tick. We're not going to use the tick though, but on begin play, this is when we're going to get our game instance, cast to VN, and let's say get menu. And I'm actually going to ask if we're in game. Because what we're going to be doing with this game mode is it's going to be the sort of game mode for just when we're looking at our visual novel. But when we're doing a mini game, for example, we're going to have a different game mode, and that's going to have a different gameplay. So we don't just want to assume that we're going to be putting our menu on screen. We might go from this game mode to another game mode, and then back to this game mode to back to our dialogue. And so in that case, we would want to put our dialogue on screen instead of our menu widget. So if we're in game, we're going to get the dialogue widget and put this on the viewport instead. Add to viewport. Otherwise, we're going to add the menu widget to our add to viewport screen. And in case you don't know, a game mode is an actor that is spawned automatically, depending on your world settings. And just like our game instance, a lot of things have really easy access to our game mode. If we do get game mode, like that, things have really easy access to it. Anyways, let's compile and save this. And I'm also going to go to my class defaults, class settings over here. Sorry, defaults. This is defaults. I'm going to change the player default pawn class. That's the actor we're possessing at the very beginning of the game, or at the beginning of this map. And I'm going to change this from default pawn, which is the one that allows us to move around, to just pawn, because we don't need the ability to move around or anything like that. Now let's create our player control. Let's make sure this works first. Let's get rid of this stuff in our level blueprint. And there's two ways we could set up our game mode. We could go to our world settings and override it over here in game mode override, or we could just make it the default game mode. So we can go to edit, project settings, maps and modes, and choose default game mode. Go to VN game mode. So now if we hit play, the menu shows up. Great. We still have to deal with the mouse though, and we can't move around anymore, so that's good. To deal with the mouse, we can create a new blueprint class. This is going to be player controller. We'll call this VN player controller. And in the game mode, I'm going to set our player controller class to VN player controller. And in this player controller, I am going to make sure that the show mouse cursor over here in the class initial values of our class, make sure this is checked. And we're going to enable click events, or actually I'm not sure if this is necessary. That's fine. So if we compile and save and play now, and we click somewhere else, we still have our mouse, and we can go back to clicking on our menu if we want. So that's great. Okay. What else was there to do? We got rid of this. Game instance. Oh, in my game instance, I also stored a reference to our Codex widget over here, just because in the modify name value we use it a lot, and I don't want to go from I don't want to have to say get our menu widget and then get its Codex widget to do this stuff. It's faster to just have our Codex widget as a variable. Memory is relatively cheap these days, not actually like dollar-wise, because that's actually pretty expensive. But moving on, I also moved when we add our flag to our triggered flags, I moved it to just being part of our modify name value, and the value name we're modifying is trigger flag instead of having it in our dialog event, because I don't want it to be cluttering up our. Here, let me show you what I mean. If we go to our test dialog and that's for something else, if we say enter event for our game instance, and it was just event, and we said something like, I don't know, hello world. Whenever we go to something else, or whenever we add another event for game instance, hello world will pop up, and the more flags we would trigger, the bigger this list would get, and I just don't want that to happen. So I decided to just move it all down into a modify name value instead. Just thought I'd point that out. Okay. Codex button okay. Just like the same way we kept track of our Codex widget here, so that we don't have to keep going from a menu to our Codex, I want to do the same thing in our Codex widget, or our Codex button over here. Because in our Codex button, every time this is called, we have to get our game instance, we have to cast it to a game instance, we have to get its dialog widget in order to get its participants. I'd rather just have this as a variable. So let's actually just delete this, and we're going to promote this to a variable. Promote to variable. We're going to call this dialog widget, and I'm going to make this exposed on spawn. And then back in my Codex, when we spawn it over here, let's refresh this node. There it is, our dialog widget. We can just pass it in from, say, over here. Let's just make this a input for our create codex buttons, because this is being called from our game instance, who has a pointer to our dialog widget. So in our game instance, in the event graph over here, when we create our codex buttons, we can just pass in the dialog widget right there. So if we hit play, start, and then we go to our codex, this is all still fine. And why are there so many entries? What is going on here? Update codex. Should there be that many? This is quite a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. How many times is this being called? Hold on. Let me do a print. Look at our output log and start. Okay, this is being called twice for some reason. That's fine, we can fix that easily, I think. If we just go back to our game instance, because this is being called after we get our persistent data, what we can do is before we get our persistent data, we can just check to see if we have one or not. So get persistent data is valid, do the execution one, and on the not valid, we will do this sequence. Let's try that now. Play, go to our codex, and we still have a ton of these. And where's my print string? Oh, I think I got rid of it. Yeah, I got rid of it. Let's try that. Yeah, this is still being called twice. Not valid. Then we create this. There's no for loop here. Create codex buttons. passing in the codex, update codex details. Okay, fine, let's just do it the other way then. We're gonna do, if our detail scroll box, or sorry, not details, button scroll box, get child count if it's equal to 0. Then we'll do this stuff. Meaning we don't have any buttons yet, then we can create our buttons. Let's see if this fixes things. Go to our codex. Okay, that's good. That's a really strange bug that's happening. I'm not sure what's going on there. Moving on. So we did that. Our menus button. Yes. So back in our menu, over here, when we, well, first off, let's talk about this. We used to have to check to see if we have a dialog widget, and then we have to pass it into our code, our options when we clicked on options. But we don't have to do that anymore because our game instance will spawn all that stuff for us. So there's really no need to do this stuff. So let's just get rid of this and put our options on screen instead. Let's save some space. And what is this for menu? That's not actually fine, but it's fine. And on start, that's right. Same thing for over here. We had to check to see if we had a dialog widget. We don't have to do that anymore, so let's just get rid of this. Like so. And for the in our actual dialog widget, when we click on this, any of these menu buttons that make the menu pop up, we were updating the button visibility after we added it to the viewport, but that's not necessary because in our menu we actually do that in the event construct, which is called when it's added to the viewport. So if we just get rid of these, we have to make the add to viewport go after our set active widget index though, because it's break link, because the update button visibility is based on the active widget index. So we have to make sure to set the active widget index before we add it to viewport, which calls the update button visibility. Let's just move these over and break link and plug this in. Break link and plug this in. Alright. Let's just make sure this all still works. Go to our codex, that's fine. Great. Menu gallery button. Oh yes, we're going to do an image gallery, and I never actually had a button for that, so we might as well just add one. Button into our horizontal box. Maybe put this up after options. There we go. I'm going to call this gallery. Put a text in there. This is just going to be gallery. Size of 28 and black. And we'll do the functionality for that later. Do I have to do anything with the size of this? I feel like I do. Ah yes, fill. Okay. Start and options, click dialog on menu. Yep, these are all fine. Menu background image. So we're actually going to want to change this background image probably based on if we're in the main menu or if we're doing some other stuff. If we're in the game, I mean. Like, for example, if we were to, say, go to RenP and wait for RenP to pop up. This is taking a surprising amount of time. Well, anyways, the main menu on most visual novels, the image is probably different from what you would have as your image based on if you were in the options or whatever. So let's just go to our graph, and in our background image, where are we going to do this? On click back, start. Okay, so basically for any of these really, we're going to get our background image and we're going to set it to just something else. Set brush from texture, and the texture is going to be whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to do something not what we're going to be using for now. Actually, it doesn't matter because right now there's no image and we wouldn't be able to see it. But basically on the end of any of these, besides, actually for start as well, we would just plug it into here and set it to be whatever the background image would be for option stuff. So if we go to the question and we launch this, this is what I'm talking about. The background image over here is this, but if we go to our load, for example, oh wait, no, that's actually still the same. What if we start and preferences, music, never mind. Okay, well, I want it to change, so let's just do that. I'll just plug the rest of them in later. And then the small notification text. Okay, so if we press play right now, and we go to start, the notification text is really big. Like if you have something really long, it takes up a huge amount of space. I don't want it to be like that. I want our notification text to be slightly smaller. So what I'm going to do is in my visual novel library, is in the toTarget text. Oh, and the fake lerp too, we can get rid of that. Anyways, in the toTarget text, I'm going to add another boolean. And this is going to be use small style. Sure. And for each of our styles over here in our DT text styles, I added another version of it for a smaller version. And I just called it whatever it is, plus small at the end. So what we're going to do is in our visual novel library, we're going to add another pin, and we're going to move all these down. This was close last text style. Okay, and then 4 plugs into here. So before we close all the tags and after we automatically style our keywords, let's move all these down. And I'm going to do a branch based on if we're using a small text style or not. So branch, and plug this into number 3 over here. Yeah, 3. And what we're going to do is say if we are using the small text style, we are going to get our process string and replace inline. The search text is going to be the greater than sign, and we're going to replace it with small and greater than sign. And then we're going to set our process string doing this. Well, just get our process. Actually, we don't have to do that. Because this is replacing inline, we don't actually have to set that. So let's drain this connection and let's test that out. Compile, save, and start. And that didn't work because I forgot to actually do that in my dialog over here. So in the dialog, when we do our notify, we're going to make sure this is checked. Use small style. Press start, and now the notification takes up significantly less space and it's a lot smaller. And for the last thing, we actually don't need this fake lerp function because for some reason I forgot that that's actually already a function in Unreal. If we go to our characters, that's where we're using it in our widgets and participant. When we do this stuff over here in the fake lerp, we can actually just use interp2, f-interp2 constant. This is basically the same thing, except it's like I think it's like 10 times faster or something. Not in terms of performance, but in terms of how fast it moves the stuff. So if we plug this in, the target is our target x, move speed is our speed, and delta time is delta time. This is for our render transform, so let's plug that in there, get rid of our fake lerp, and change the move speed to 500. And then somewhere in our script, let's say in the next line, we're going to tell Yuri to modify name, I believe we used, and it was position X to, let's say, right. Hit start and go to the next one. There she moves, and that's actually really slow. Move speed 1000. That's 100. 1000. Anyways, point is that the function already sort of exists. We don't really have to make our own function, so we can actually get rid of that. 2500 is too fast. I'm fine with that. Anyways, so in our over here in our this other fake lerp, let's also use the f interp to constant, and we want to use the constant one because it won't ease in and out of it, like it would with the other f interp to. It would sort of do this easing thing, which I'm not a big fan of. Like so. Delete this and move that over there. And then in our visual novel library, let's just get rid of this function that was never needed to be made. So yeah, I think that was it for what I wanted to do before we moved on to doing some more exciting stuff. And I'll see you in the next video.